Stevenson Expressway outbound traffic is stop and go from the Des Plaines River Bridge to LaGrange Road. The exit to southbound LaGrange is blocked with a jackknife. From DuSable Lakeshore Drive, 25 minutes inbound, 355 to drive.
This is a little too loud.
Tight Cicero to Pulaski. Northbound 394 has delays from Sauk Trail to US 30 for the crash on the right shoulder. Inbound Kennedy, 18 minutes. O'Hare to downtown, outbound 20. Eisenhower, 25 minutes inbound or outbound between downtown and 390. On the inbound Ryan, drive time has gone up 15 minutes to downtown with a couple of heavy pockets. Bishop Ford, 13 minutes, 8094 to the...
I'm back.
Okay, thank you. Can you bring the radio, bring that feed down just a bit?
Is that good?
Yeah. Because I wanted to speak with Pastor Hatch.
Weekdays 11 to 2 right here on WCPT.
Okay. Pastor Hatch, how are you this morning?
I'm super blessed today.
Good. Thank you. We're going to come right to...
We have about a minute left.
Okay, thank you. What time do we come in?
We should be coming in around 6:50.
Okay, that's what I need to know. Because that's part of the problem. I've been told it was 6:06, and so that's what I'm prepared for. Okay. Thank you so much.
Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs. I need eggs that can make me as productive in my home office as I am at my office.
It's possible with Staples Connect. I got a PC that'll help me get the most out of my day and my budget.
Staples Connect makes it possible with the tools you need to work from anywhere. And now get up to $200 off select PCs, like the Lenovo IdeaPad 5i with Intel i5 processor. Explore what's new at your local Staples or staplesconnect.com. Staples Connect.
10 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
1017.
Yep.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today. A joy to be with you. So much is going on in the world. It is Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Please meet them at Santita Jackson and Friends, and meet Andre and Linda and Dave and Louis, Louis Chewy and Elvis. Oh, I haven't seen you before from the Caribbean. Where are you in the Caribbean? Vangelie down there in Brazil, and Carol and Joyce, and so many of you. Everybody like and share. Elvis, please like and share. Vangelie, please like and share. Andre, please like and share. And you can also meet me over on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show channel. Please like and subscribe there. We're going to be talking about giving you an update on Haiti. Haiti, have you seen the pictures of the horses chasing the Haitians away? It's absolutely horrific. And then we, of course, are going to have our COVID Q&A with Dr. Deborah Verholden. And then at the top of the hour, we're going to look at the rights, the civil liberties that we have lost since 2001. What can we do about that? Defending Rights and Dissent, a wonderful organization out of Washington, D.C. They've gotten they've had a petition drive, and they've gotten some really, really high-powered people to sign on. I'm not high-powered, but but I've signed on to get our civil liberties back. And then, of course, we're going to have John Nichols. He's going to give us the latest and the greatest on what happened in Canada. You know, Bernie Sanders jumped in on that and endorsed the candidate who's not Justin Trudeau, someone to the left of Justin Trudeau. But we're also going to be looking at the fight to have our government negotiate our prescription drug prices. There's a real pushback from centrist Democrats. I mean, many people, even with insurance, even with the best of insurance, they cannot afford life-saving medicines because they are out of reach, because the pharmaceuticals, they run this game. And we got to look at that and look at the centrist Democrats who are standing in the way. Who is standing in the way? So We're going to get to a few of these headlines, and we're going to have some good news from Pastor Marshall Hatch, everybody. In Chicago, I think fall is coming. It's already the third week in September. But what a wonderful summer it has been. Chicago will have a high of 68 degrees. There will be showers. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 67 degrees. It will be sunny. The Dow closed down, 614 points yesterday. Now, traditionally, September is the toughest month on Wall Street, but it's something to watch, everybody. The Nasdaq went down 330 points, and the S&P 500 was down 75 points. The Twins will be playing the Cubs today, and the White Sox, well, they fell to the Tigers. Tigers 4, White Sox 3. And then there was an NFL game. It's like they're playing all week now, right? Yeah. The Packers 35. Wow. The Lions 17. I love football. My father made me learn it. They made me learn it, everybody. All right, what's going on? Immigration. The White House says it's seeking more information about this video that appears to show mounted U.S. Border Patrol agents aggressively chasing down everybody, Haitian migrants at the southern border, and they were on horseback. These are horrific pictures. About 10,000 people, many of them Haitian refugees, are still crowded near the Del Rio International Bridge in Texas after the Department of Homeland Security moved some 3,000 people to other processing facilities yesterday. And we're going to talk about that today with the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. What is going on in Haiti? In the meantime, President Biden is seeking to double refugee admissions. Will that work? How will that work? Who will be admitted? Does that include Afghans? Are we now going to let in more Haitians? We need to know about that, everybody. Pfizer and BioNTech announced that their lower dose COVID-19 vaccine was found to be safe and generated a robust antibody response in children ages 5 to 11. But before those children can become eligible for the vaccine, 4 things must happen. First, Pfizer needs to request FDA authorization for this new age group. Then, the FDA would need to amend the vaccine's emergency use authorization to include younger people. After that, the CDC would have to weigh in. Finally, rollout logistics would need to be addressed, including how to tackle vaccine hesitancy among parents. The results of Canada's snap general election are in. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has prevailed over Conservative rival Aaron O'Toole, meaning his Liberal Party will be able to form Canada's next government. However, his side fell short of winning the 170 seats needed to form a majority government. Congressional Democratic leaders have announced that they will attach a suspension of the debt limit to a must-pass spending bill to keep the government funded. It would be the first time in our history that we would default. That is something that America really cannot do. We would pay for that. In the meantime, we're hearing that there is an atrocity. Guess what, everybody? The poor are going without vaccines as rich nations are set to let 100 million COVID vaccines rot. What about the therapeutics, everybody? You need to ask about those too, as America is easing travel restrictions for foreign visitors who are vaccinated against COVID. But even if you're vaccinated against COVID, when you come to the United States, you're going to have proof that you are COVID-19 negative, everybody. So those are some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. But you know what? We have got a brilliant pastor, theologian, someone who is active in our community from this beautiful cathedral. I encourage everyone to go to the New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church here in Chicago. You will see some of the most stunning works of art featuring African American peoples, featuring the African American struggle, the Black struggle in the United States of America, the Black triumphs. These are the most beautiful stained glass renderings of some of the great heroes in American history, and I want you to get on over there. Plus, he is working with our young people. He and Dr. D. Dwight McKee. We have got Pastor, that's right, Marshall Elijah. I love that. Your parents knew exactly what they were doing. Bless their heart, Pastor Marshall Hatch. How are you today?
I am blessed today. How are you, Santita?
I'm doing great. It's wonderful hearing your voice. What is the good news?
Absolutely. Listen, there is an Old Testament Psalm 90, and there's a verse that says, teach us to number our days, that we can apply our hearts to wisdom, that we can live wisely. And it's an Old Testament psalm, and it's unusual in that it is not considered a psalm of David. It's considered a psalm of Moses. And it's this remarkable psalm that shares that we live our lives. He says, teach us to number, to consider each day, that we will learn to live wisely. And so it kind of clearly suggests that we don't, when somebody asks us how old we are, we normally say I'm such years old. But we don't live our lives 1 year at a time. We live them 1 day at a time. Teach us to consider each day so we can learn to live wisely. What a powerful teaching that this Old Testament, this ancient scripture that comes to us, many say from the mind of Moses' journey with God, this revelation of wisdom. Let us consider each day, because when we consider each day, that's how we learn to live wisely. And so it suggests at least 3 things. One thing, it suggests that we live the days of our lives are unreclaimable. That once we live a day, that day we cannot go back and live again. Once that day is gone, it's gone, and it's gone forever. That day is unreclaimable by us. So it means whatever we were supposed to do that day, we need to do it that day, because there will never be another day just like that day. And whatever we need to tell people, we need to tell them that day. If we love people, we should tell them we love them. There's another scripture in the New Testament that says, don't go to bed angry. As if you are assured you'll wake up in the morning. Whatever you need to resolve it today. Whoever you love, you need to tell them you love them today, because our days are unreclaimable. Once that day is gone, it's gone forever. And then secondly, our days are exhaustible. It means that, listen, he says, teach us in the Old text to number our days. It means that our days are numbered, that we're living only a specific number of days, and who but God knows the number of our days from beginning to end. But one thing we can be assured is that our days are exhaustible. It means that there's a specific number, and then when they're over. When it's up. And when time is up, it's up. And so, Lord, teach us that our days are exhaustible, that we're slowly running out of days. And who knows how much time we have. But we know one thing, we got 7 less days today than we did this time last week. Because we're living on numbered days. And, I know a lot of us, we regret, having to deal with aging. But I used to have an aunt that say she lived to 107 years old from Amy, Mississippi. And she said, Marshall, getting old, is not bad. It's just inconvenient. It's just inconvenient. But because what happens is the body begins to send us signals that we're running out of days. We used to leap up a flight of stairs and never have to catch our breath. Now we find ourselves holding on maybe a little bit every third step, taking our time. And those of us who, we're in the grooming, I had just a moment of panic, because I went to 2 or 3 stores and I noticed that they were out of Just for Men. And I was almost in a full panic, because, it's one of the products that I use. Color my hair and my beard just a little bit. But if I don't color it, I'll start getting those reminders of gray hair. And what does the gray hair do? It reminds me I'm running out of days. That my days are being exhausted. And so, Lord, teach us to live wisely on one day at a time, that our days are unreclaimable, that they're exhaustible. And then finally, teach us that our days are accountable. for this great gift of life, we are going to be accountable to the one who gives life, the supreme giver of life. We have to be held accountable. And of course, that's the fact of the matter that many of us, we try to avoid, that there's going to be an accountability anytime there is great gift. To whom much is given, much is required. And so we are going to have to give an account to God, whatever our religious tradition is. Every one of them has accountability and consequence somewhere in there as a sort of a reckoning, for what we've really done with what we've been given. We have to live as if we're going to be accountable. And that's a frightening thought for many of us when we think about the things that we've done. I mean, are you saying that every day is going to be judged? Well, the bad news is that, yes, we're going to all have to give accountable, and that can be pretty rough to contemplate. But the good news is that there is revelation that God is a God of grace and mercy, and the God of another chance, another opportunity. That's what grace is. Grace is opportunity. Faith is how we take advantage of grace, but grace itself just means opportunity. The grace days that you have, a longer opportunity to pay your mortgage 15 days into the month before it's late. It's grace.
Amen.
And so it means that ultimately that, listen, every day is an opportunity of the state of grace, which means what? It means that I can begin to leave what I've done in my previous days, and then this day, God gives me an opportunity to start all over again. If I was in the black church, we'd say, ain't God all right? Isn't that wonderful? That today we can start over again. And that's the good news of today.
Amen to that.
Today is your opportunity to start your life all over again, no matter how old you are, no matter how young you are. This day itself is a brand new opportunity to do what you need to do, what you know to do, what you're required to do, what you're led to do, what you have the unction to do. Today is your gift of opportunity. Use it well.
It's a new day, everybody. It's a new day. God bless you, Pastor Marshall Hatch. Our days are numbered. We are accountable. This is a new day, everybody. Make it count. The new Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church. That's why you need to get on over there, everybody. Sending you much love, Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch, brilliant theologian and a preaching machine. We just love you. Thank you so much for being with us today. I needed that today.
All right.
I needed that today. It'll make me do some things I didn't do yesterday that I should have done. It's so true. Absolutely. Absolute blessings to you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for that gift today. Thank you for that gift. God bless you. Dr. Deborah Holden, noted epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. I wish we had more time to spend with you today. But, we are concerned about what's happening in Haiti. And so, I told you we're going to be doing updates because now we've seen these pictures of these migrants being chased by our patrol agents on horseback. It is like they're in the fields, back in slavery. It's just unbelievable. That having been said, we also, as you look at your fight for equity, we've come across this very, very interesting information, that the poor, we're talking about boosters in this part of the world, but there are 100 million vaccines that are set to expire at the end of the year. Wow. The European Union holds 41%. The United States holds 32%. This is a new analysis that is projected that these 100 million COVID-19 vaccines stockpiled by rich nations are set to expire by the end of the year. What do you say about that? I mean, and I'm wondering about the therapeutics too, because once you get COVID, whether you're vaccinated or not, you need medicine. What about that? Dr. Deb?
Well, we talked about being a good global steward of resources, and we don't live in a world where that happens. You know, this is the COVID pandemic. I love how Pastor Tisha says is the snitch. It didn't create the problem, but boy, did it make it inescapable and shine a light on it. So there's a problem. You know, we've got, countries who've been hoarding vaccine. Canada rushed right to the front of the line and made sure that they had enough to give everybody in their population 2 doses. And that's their right. You get to take care of your own house first. But this is a global pandemic. And I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they said, if everybody just got on board right now and got vaccinated, will we bring this thing to a close? Would it be we'd be able to shut it all down right now? I said, unfortunately, no. The train has left the station, and it's global. See, so because of travel and other things, this is now with us. It's become endemic, and it's something that we're going to have to figure out how to live with. We don't know what the natural history of the dying out period for this strain of coronavirus will be. So global stewardship serves us all, right? It serves us all to make sure that everybody is resourced with vaccine, with therapeutics, with prevention measures. Mm-hmm. Because if we're going to bring this thing to a close and get flatten the curve, get the numbers down, no one country can do it unless you shut yourself off entirely from the rest of the world. Now, who's going to do that? Who's going to say, our citizens can't go anywhere, nor can outsiders come in? No one's going to do that. They might do that for a short period, mm-hmm. but no one's going to be able to sustain that for the long haul.
Australia and New Zealand, they shut themselves off and they shut it down, but then it would creep up. But, that which brings me to this, the United States is now easing travel restrictions for, internationally. But you have to be vaccinated and you have to present evidence that you are COVID-19 negative. Now, if you are vaccinated, why must you also present evidence that you are COVID-19 negative?
Well, just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean that you can't be a carrier. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that you won't ultimately get infected. What it does mean is that you are at substantially reduced risk for severe infection and hospitalization and death. And so being vaccinated is really good for the individual, right? But remember what we always talked about, wearing the mask. The mask is yes, it does protect you from others. But what it really does is protect others from you. Mm. That's what it's really great at, protecting others from you. And so, just where we are right now, we need to know people's status, And, yeah, I think it's great. I tell people all the time, if you were going to contract COVID, you'd rather contract COVID vaccinated than not vaccinated. And clearly the goal is for people to not contract COVID at all. Mm-hmm. But what's important if people are going to be around people in a confined small space is to know people's status and for people to be messed up. That is the most important thing. So, yeah, go back to that Swiss cheese model. Multiple layers improve success. We're going to need many things happening at the same time to keep people safe and flatten the curve.
Dr. Deborah Holden, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, epidemiologist, letting us know what we need to do, even as we know more. We still need to do more. There are things that we put into practice last year that we need to continue to practice because, like you said, before we got the vaccines, we were able to begin to flatten the curve, practice good hand hygiene, oral hygiene, mask up properly. And for heaven's sake, please take care of yourselves. Sending you much love. The most glamorous glamour in the United States of America today. That's what Joyce Anderson says. The beautiful glamour. Dr. Deborah Holden. Dr. Deborah Holden's daughter and granddaughter look just like her. Wow. What a gift. This is unbelievable. You will live on forever and ever and ever. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Jeb, stick around for a hot second because I'm concerned about the public health crisis that I kind of see emerging. at this border. No one's talking about that, Dr. Deb. We're going to have attorney Anastasia Sanat. She's the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. And we want to hear from her about what's happening at the border. Have you seen these horrific pictures of the men on horseback chasing these migrants? Unbelievable. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a few minutes. Dr. Deb, can you stay with me for a hot second?
Yeah, sure.
Because I think I don't think we're paying enough attention to that. I think we have a real crisis, particularly in a pandemic. I'm worried about that. Very worried about that. And I think that's something you can speak to it, but it's something that I think we're going to have to pay attention to. We have to pay attention to. So, all right. You know me, I'm moving stuff on. But how are things going, hon?
Wonderful. I'm actually headed to Baltimore today.
Wish I could have a nice crab boy.
Crab cakes and nicer weather there. And so we're going to drive because it's just safer. So it's a little 8-hour bop, but it'll be worth it.
Oh, wow. Well, are you taking Jordan and the baby with you?
Jordan and India are going, yes.
Oh, so they get a chance to see. Oh, I'm sorry. We have Attorney Sanat.
Yeah. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Don't you sound nice and chipper today?
A little bit. Just really done a great deal.
Absolutely. Can you bring down the feed just a little bit, Cosme? You're doing a great job.
Is that good?
Okay, that's perfect, because I want to be able to speak with them. Attorney Sanat, I want you to meet Dr. Deborah Verholden, brilliant epidemiologist. She comes out of Johns Hopkins University, but they brought her to Michigan State University, brought her in their School of Medicine to build their School of Public Health. And so one of the concerns that I have is public health down there, and I would say that even but for everybody who's coming into the country. When I saw the Afghan evacuees on the plane unmasked, and I heard nothing about vaccines, I heard nothing about therapeutics, I heard nothing about whether they were COVID-19 negative or positive. It's just like they herded them onto the planes. I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Right.
So Dr. Verholden can speak to that. One of her big fights is equity. She said, not equality. No. We need equity. We need equal access to the therapeutics, to the medicines, to the testing. But let me introduce you to Attorney Sanat, Anastasia Sanat, beautiful name. Dr. Deborah Verholden, beautiful, strong name. And she is the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University, brilliant epidemiologist. And this is the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. Ladies, you have now met.
Hey, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, Dr. Verholden. I'm so pleased. I was actually listening to your segment a little bit earlier, and I agree with you that the United States does have a resource that's going to expire. And what's the problem with being good stewards of that resource by giving it to people, for example, the 23,000 Afghan deported people from their own country here, and giving it to the Haitians that are at the border. There's just nothing wrong with that. Why can't we make sure that if we're going to
35 seconds
we don't like, for example,
just so everyone knows.
So stand by.
Now get ready to hear
I want us to get into that on the air.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. We're on Facebook Live right now, but this is good.
I'll just give it a try on
That's why I asked her to stay. But she has a regular segment. She's on here until about 7 o'clock every
10
day.
seconds.
Season of The Voice with Ariana Grande premieres tonight on NBC.
Just a little loud, Cosme. I need you to bring that down just a bit.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, AM 950 radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on the YouTube page. The Santita Jackson Show. Please like and subscribe there and meet me over on Twitter at SantitaJ. Please join me over there. And if you want to hear the podcast of the show, spread the word. WCPT820.com/Santita. That's the show without the commercials. WCPT 820, WCPT820.com/Santita. You know, I promised you that we were going to stay on top of the Haitian story because I think that the Haitian deportation crisis is a story that that is emblematic of our times. It is. Well, let me read this to you from the New York Times. The Haitian migrants had done well for themselves since leaving their country many more than a decade ago. They had built lives in Chile and Brazil and Panama. They had homes and cars. They had stable jobs as bank tellers, welders, mine supervisors, gas station attendants. But they longed for the possibility of a better life in the United States under a president who had protected Haitians in the United States from deportation and many believed would relax entry requirements. So they sold their belongings, left their jobs, and pulled their kids out of school, and they headed north. But instead of the reception they'd expected, they were detained in the small border town of Del Rio, Texas, and without warning, deported to Haiti, a broken country many no longer recognized, in a head-spinning sequence that left them feeling mistreated and betrayed. And now we see these pictures of Homeland Security officials who are now going to investigate as we see border agents on horseback grabbing migrants. I mean, these scenes are absolutely horrific to see these persons chased down by these horse-mounted Border Patrol agents attempting to grab migrants and using their animals to push them back toward Mexico. Well, you know, we've got Dr. Deborah Verholten is still with us because she's concerned about what could be a looming public health crisis on the border and with these human beings who are looking for a better life in the United States. And so we said, you know, let's go to attorney Anastasia Sanat. Is that a beautiful name? Brilliant lawyer. And she's the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. And, you know, we on the Santita Jackson Show want to keep this issue front and center because I think it's a big issue. And the only way it's going to remain an issue is if we talk about it. Attorney Sanat, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. What are we looking at? What is happening? We see the people on the border agents on horseback. Pushing people back into Mexico. And then the Haitians, they're in shock. They're getting on planes. They're thinking they're coming to the United States, and they're in Port-au-Prince. What's going on?
Yes. So there's unfortunately a lot of things that the American public has not known about the U.S. Border Patrol for many, many years. One thing is that they have been riding horseback along the border because of the terrain. However, the whips, it's normally supposed to be used in order to keep people from the horses, not on the people. So the images that we're seeing now where it's being used on the people is definitely going to be investigated. But I think it's inappropriate. And of course, it takes us back to the time of slavery. When you see a black person being whipped. And so it's inappropriate behavior. I don't believe that anybody in the White House should agree to that kind of conduct, regardless of the resources that the DHS has at their disposal. I think that they should be treating the Haitian migrants differently. We do realize that a lot of Afghan refugees have come into the United States. They've been given food, clothing, shelter. They've been given an opportunity to apply for refugee status, will then lead them to a pathway to citizenship. I think all of those things are needed for the Haitian migrants that are here. They left Haiti, as you correctly summarized, more than 10 years ago. And Haiti is going through a crisis. Why, if you want to help the people of Haiti, would you send the people of Haiti 10, 15,000 people that haven't been there for those years. So they should be getting their vaccination if they have them. I think Dr. Furholden mentioned earlier in her segment that the United States has 100 million vaccines that are set to expire. Is that correct?
That is a headline that I brought up. 100 million are set to expire by the end of the year, and it's something that she has brought up repeatedly. As Dr. Deborah Furholden, why don't you speak to that just very quickly?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because while we sit around and do all of these ridiculous things to try to force vaccines on people in the U.S. who don't want them, we've got people in our global community who want it and don't have access to it. And instead of us being good stewards of that resource and sharing it, we're going to let them sit around and expire. I think it's a real blow to humanity, and the stuff that's happening at the border is just terrible. This whole entire country was founded by immigrants. Let's be real clear.
And slaves. And slaves. First right? Enslaved labor. First of all, we took the Native Americans' land. Then you brought in slaves. You imported them to do the work. And then we brought immigrants in. After we cleared the fields.
And Haiti has had a difficult history because they were the only country in the Western Hemisphere to have a successful slave revolt. And they've been suffering since because the global community has done their best to economically disenfranchise them. And now we have a global pandemic and a variety of health disparities that these individuals may or may not have had with them and brought with them by traveling through the jungles of Panama to get to the United States. Why not give them this vaccine? Why not test them for communicable diseases, including COVID-19, and make sure that the 100 million vaccine shots that are available are given to the people that they want to try to deport? What about the 327 people that arrived in Haiti on Sunday? What about the 6 or 7 flights that are about to leave in order to go to Haiti? How do we know that they're not further crippling the country of Haiti by their actions? So I think the United States needs to take a different position. They need to stop. They need to slow down. Maybe expand TPS protections. I understand that they've already given it as of May, but expand it to the people that are at the border. Also, maybe think about creating some legislative history. The Haitian Immigration, Refugee, and Fairness Act was enacted in 1998 in order to create a pathway to citizenship for the Haitian people. There's also the Cuban Adjustment Act that's been around since 1966.
And what is that?
In order to allow the Cuban Adjustment Act is a law that basically says nationals from Cuba who fit certain eligibility criteria can then be on a pathway to citizenship. They'll get a green card, and then after you have your green card for 5 years, then you can apply for citizenship. So these ways that the United States has created for some countries and not other countries is bad. I think it needs to change, particularly for Black immigrants. I think a lot of people do forget about Black immigrants. They don't really think about the immigration law having an impact on Black immigrants like people from Haiti or people from Ghana or people from Nigeria, but it does. And, we want to come to the United States voluntarily, not involuntarily like we had to in 1619. So why not give us an opportunity to come in here just like people from Europe or the European Union?
So we're still seeing an uneven immigration and asylum policy in the United States today. How did these migrants, how did these immigrants, how did these asylum seekers, how did they get to Del Rio, Texas? Generally, when we see Haitians come in, they're coming in through Miami. How did they get
on a plane, right?
Yeah.
Well, in this particular situation, you summed it up. There's a lot of people that already had jobs in Chile. There are a lot of people that already had jobs in Brazil. So quite frankly, some of them were being mistreated in that country. And a lot of our laws here say if you were not in your country most recently, you have to explain why you left the country you were just in, particularly if you had status. So in 2016, when the Rio Olympics was over, a lot of the workers had left Brazil, even though they had green cards for that country, to come to the United States in order to do more work. So they are, quote unquote, migrant workers. But there was a law that President Reagan had put out there for agricultural workers. This particular law can be changed and updated to include these other professionals, bakers, welders, all of those types of professionals that are coming from Haiti or are of Haitian descent. I don't believe that they should be just picked up and moved back to a country that's not prepared.
How does it happen? They were put on a plane and then they were landed in Port-au-Prince. How was that justified?
There's an expedited removal process.
Okay.
I don't want to get too legal, but basically there's a law. A lot of people are in the media have been saying that Title 42 is what's being used as a public health crisis in order to keep people and remove people, but that's really not the process that's being used. As of July 26, 2021, DHS has been using expedited removal proceedings, and that law was created in 1996. It basically allows the Department of Homeland Security to quickly remove or deport certain non-citizens who are present without authorization or the undocumented, as we've heard, and or have committed a fraud or misrepresentation. So they go in, they see an immigration official, and the immigration official, their job is to find out, is there a credible fear of return to the country? So we've already established that many of these migrants have not been in Haiti for 10 years. So it becomes very difficult for them to establish that they even have a credible fear of Haiti. They're going to say, well, there's gangs, which is true. There's gangs all over the world, right? Even in the United States. Well, there's poverty. Well, there's poverty in the United States. Well, there's a natural disaster. Well, if you were here before the TPS was issued May 22nd, 2021, you would be covered under that. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, do they have an actual fear? The assassination of their president happened in July, but they weren't in the country when it happened. They weren't part of the politics that allowed the person to get elected in the first place, nor were they part of the politics that created his death. So they have a very hard burden to prove that they are credibly afraid of being in Haiti other than for food, shelter, and basic necessities that everybody in the world looks for. So the immigration official then determines, well, you don't have a credible fear, so therefore you cannot seek asylum, which is a higher burden in order to show that you are going to be persecuted on account of basically 5 things. And if they can't even show they have a credible fear of returning home, that's how they're able to get on the plane that quickly, because that's the process that DHS has been using. It's a law that was created in 1996 in order to try to decrease the amount of people that were coming at the border without processing through the courtrooms. So a lot of these migrants, they don't get to talk to family, they don't get to talk to attorneys, they don't get to talk to friends who might know something. And of course, Haitians, they speak a different language. A lot of people think that, oh, Haitians speak French. No, they stopped using the colonial language and teaching it in like the 1980s. So a lot of them still speak the raw Haitian Creole language, and they understand that language. And so it's very difficult for them to understand what the process of meeting that burden of credible fear in order to get to the point where they can even apply for asylum, or to see a judge, or to have an opportunity in order to state their case of why they fear persecution in their own home country.
Everybody, we're talking with attorney Anastasia Sanat. She's the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association, about the issue at the border, about our Haitian brothers and sisters who are being shipped back to Haiti. Many of them have not seen Haiti in more than a decade. Yeah, after the earthquake. And so much unrest, they went to Brazil, they went to Chile, they went through South and Central America. That's where they went. But then they said, I think we might have a better time in the United States, because many people don't think of the racism, the anti-Black racism. Let me be very specific. The darker you are, the harder you have it, quite frankly, throughout the world. Attorney Anastasia Sanat and Dr. Deborah Verholden, brilliant epidemiologist, associate dean of public health at Michigan State University. I think that that's something that we just have to be very honest about all of this. And these people are desperate. And that is what, I mean, when I see this New York Times story in which these persons say, I thought the United States, quote, was a big country with laws. They treated us terribly. I said, bless your heart. You didn't know? I know. I mean, there's a law, attorney Sanat, and then there's the practice. And it seems to me that is there a separation between what's on the books and what's being practiced?
Well, the United States likes to tout that we have a tradition of generosity and fairness to others. But we already know that if we look at the reality of our history, we haven't had a tradition of generosity and fairness to others. People who are Black, who are born and raised here in the United States, have been mistreated. So one can't think that it's not a far cry or far step if the United States has then created laws that have kept Black and brown people from entering the United States and given an opportunity to people who are lighter in complexion or lighter in color and, quote unquote, a different race in order to enter the United States with more ease. So when we think about the systemic racism, that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about what we're putting in the advertising, right? Fairness, generosity, and then what's really, what do you call it, the side effects when you're talking about a medication, right? So this is the benefits of all the things that you can get when you come to the United States. You get a job, you can go to school, you can feed your family, clothing, shelter, all of these things. That's in the advertising. But the side effects of coming to the United States are exactly what you've just said, Ms. Jackson. It is racism. It is there, and the trauma that is inflicted upon people, particularly people who come from Black countries like Haiti. It's just, there's no bridge. There's no bridge. There's no assistance. And I believe that we should be reaching out to our brothers and sisters from Haiti and helping them. I think collectively, if the American people truly want to end this, they should be writing to their legislators. They should be writing to the House and the Senate and asking them to change the laws, create laws that actually help others and not hurt others.
We're talking with attorney Anastasia Sanat. She is the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association. And I want to bring in Dr. Deborah Verholden here, Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. Let me ask you this about intake, Dr. Verholden. What should that process look like? And then I want Attorney Sanat to tell us what it actually does look like. In a pandemic, should we test people who have been making their way through the world to get to Texas? Should we be testing them for COVID-19? Should we be vaccinating them for COVID-19? Should they want that? Should we be treating them for COVID-19? Should they have it? Should we be testing them for other illnesses and not pushing them back out into the sea, if you will, metaphorically speaking? Should we be doing health screenings just to make sure that we can contain anything that might be in Texas?
Well, not only that, but it's like the Good Samaritan. If you encounter somebody that's in trouble, you have a moral, ethical, obligation to help. And so, in the U.S., for example, if you don't have health insurance and you present yourself at a hospital with a critical injury, the hospital is required to treat you. They're required to get you stable and out of harm's way. That's a requirement, even if you don't have health insurance, and they are required to do that at no cost. And so to think that there are people who have gone through just impossible circumstances, to get wherever they got, once they make it to our soil or to our borders, we have a moral obligation and an ethical obligation. The problem is, I think, the distinction that you drew between policy and practice. There's what's on the books, what's written and enforceable, and then what we actually do in practice. And so I think we need to make sure that, one, we have good policies, and that, two, those policies and those laws have enforcement, that they have some teeth behind them, such that what is actually then happening in practice matches what's on the books. And I think there's probably a gap. We probably don't have enough on the books, and the stuff we do have on the books is likely not being honored, because this is a group that will have a much harder time finding that advocacy. It's like somebody's got to see it, say something, do something, elevate the cause, and all of that. So this is like a perfect storm for further victimizing people who've already been traumatized.
Attorney Sanat, is there a gap between policy and practice? I mean, when we see the border agents chasing these people, these human beings, and whipping them, lashing, I just thought of slavery, the lash. They're getting the lash. What is, I have about 4 minutes left, the policy, the practice. What is the policy? What is the practice, and what should what are the policies? Maybe what policy should be created?
Currently, the policy is that they do get a health assessment, but I don't believe that the practice is to also treat them for everything that they have. Sometimes, if a person's not healthy enough to take the plane, then of course they do try to save that person. But in some of these situations, if they're healthy enough to go on a plane, then that's what they do. The policy is just to get them on the plane. And I think that's where we need to come and check ourselves. We need to make sure that our policy and our practice are more aligned, because right now it's not a good thing.
Where do we go from here? What do you need for us to do? We need some marching orders, because we're going to do everything that we can on this show, and we're going to have you back so that we can keep this issue alive, because we still have thousands of people down at the border.
Yes. So I think the first thing that we need to do is we need to contact our congressmen, our elected officials. We put them in place because we want them to create laws that make sense, not only for the people that live here in the United States, but the people that want to come to the United States. As I mentioned, everyone should be checked for communicable diseases, including COVID-19. All of the vaccines that exist in the United States that have not been used by United States citizens should be offered to these individuals that are at the border. Number two, temporary protected status, even though it's been granted by the Secretary of Homeland Security as of May, I think it should expand to include the migrants that are at the border at this time. Why? Haiti has already gone through a crisis, an international crisis with the assassination of the president. They've had an earthquake as of August. Shortly thereafter, there was a tropical storm. And now we're still dealing with the fact that COVID-19 vaccines were not being administered in Haiti. So let's help the country out in that way. Number four, I think that we need to start creating pathways to citizenship. And the Haitian Immigration Refugee Fairness Act can be revised. There can also be a form of a law like the Cuban Adjustment Act of 1966 in order to help the people. So let's put our money together. Let's put our mouths together, and let's make things happen by getting Congress on board.
Well, if we don't treat Haitians well, does that not threaten other people who want to come to the United States?
Every country is treated differently that comes to the United States. So Haiti is treated differently. I hate to say it, but people from, for example, that are part of the visa waiver program. So like when we go to the United Kingdom, when we decide that we want to visit London, we don't have to call in and say we need a visa, because what the country has done is they struck up a contract. United States doesn't need a visa if we don't need a visa. So, for example, someone from England will come over here. They don't need a visa. They automatically get to visit our country, and we automatically get to visit their country. By allowing that to occur, believe it or not, if they meet someone that's American, they get married to that person, they're on a pathway to citizenship because they did not enter the United States illegally. Same thing with Canada. But, of course, we don't treat Mexico the same way, even though Mexico touches the United States. So we're just not treating all the countries equally. Black and brown countries definitely get treated differently.
Well, and that is really the point, everybody. And that is the way it is. And we're going to change things. But the only way that we can change things is if we know what actually happens, what actually exists. The incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association, the brilliant attorney Anastasie Sanat, and of course the brilliant Dr. Deborah Holden, epidemiologist, associate dean of public health at Michigan State University. We are going to continue to keep this story in our headlines. We've got to do that, everybody. We've got to make America all that America is supposed to be. which is fair and open and free. We're supposed to be a place that embraces everybody, not just some bodies, but everybody. Let's talk about the rights that we have lost since 2001 and how we can get them back. That's right. And then we're going to be talking with John Nichols about, prescription drugs, they cost a lot of money. And there's some centrist Democrats who are standing in between all of us and getting cheaper drugs. We're going to talk about that and so much more on the Santita Jackson Show back in just a minute. Attorney Sanat, you were brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Verholden, thank you very much. I hope to stay in touch with you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Bless her heart. Dr. Verholden, she was cavelling last night. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be good. I said, you're going to be great. You're going to be great. You can tell.
Thank you. Thank you. And call me anytime,
Oh, no. We are trying to keep this. I'll reach out to you a little bit later today because I'm really trying to keep this up front of mind. We're the ones who have to do it.
No problem.
No, we're the ones who have to do it. Even if it's just a quick 10-minute update, just to let us know what is happening. And then to continue to compare and contrast how we treat these black and brown nations as opposed to the European nations and the white nations. It's a fact. Mm-hmm. Look, let me tell you something, because I've got a whole rainbow family here. We're just trying to make things fair, everybody. We're trying to make things fair. That's the only way America is going to be America, is if things are fair for everybody. That's it.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Oh, girl,
I really appreciate it.
That's what this show is for. And please give Miss Belvon and Mr. Cleve my love today.
I sure will. All right. Talk to you all later.
This woman has the most fabulous shoes in the world, Dr. Deb.
She does. She has great clothing.
But she is sharp every day. Every day. Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
All right. Talk to you all later.
Sending you much love. Dr. Deb?
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Dr. Deb? Have you gone on already?
Yes, ma'am. No, I'm about to drop off, but I'm still here.
Well, I'm glad. Thank you so much, because I knew you'd be able to contribute to that, because that's very, very important. It's
really deplorable what's happening. It's just terrible.
Girl, when you see these pictures of them whipping these people.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Whipping the people. Lashing them. It's unbelievable. But I'm glad that we got a chance to see it. And Medi, her name is Attorney Anastasi Senat, Senat, Senat. But the only way that we're going to make this an issue, and I've had a lot of people thank me for talking about Haiti, we have to keep it front of mind every day. So everybody, make sure that you call 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121, and let our legislators in Washington.
Chip Gibbons is on the line.
Thank you so much, Cosme. Let them know that we want Haitians treated humanely, and we want them brought here into the United States. Period. Well, they want to come here. They need to be able to come here. You're bringing tens of thousands of Afghans here. They need to be here. Well, all these people need to be here. But you can't treat white and black people differently. People from the Mideast are considered to be, they're on paper, white people. And it is a racial thing. It is. And we have to be honest about that, everybody. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red, everybody here. We have to be honest about how we treat people of different races. And then, of course, if you come here with a whole lot of money, you're treated differently still. This is not working. It's not right. Dr. Deb, before you go, do you want to say anything?
No, this is just, I'm going to be in prayer on this today, too. And it's just, it's unfortunate. It's very telling about who we are, as a nation. Very, very telling.
But Dr. Deb, what about 100 vaccines?
Asian Americans here. These are their family members.
Oh, my gosh. Can you believe it? But wait a minute, Dr. Deb, what about 100 million vaccines rotting? What is that?
Oh, that's just deplorable. It's just deplorable.
First time when I saw that, I said, ooh, she's going to be hot about this. But I'm going to send you some love. So, we're going to have more time tomorrow.
Much is required.
Yeah, but tomorrow I want us to talk about that more extensively. Okay?
Okay. Sure.
Just the whole process. Because at the end of the year, they're going to rot. So, and I want to know how long you can keep a vaccine anyway. Is it 1 month, 2 months, a couple of weeks, 6 months? I don't know. You're the epidemiologist. I'm the talk show host. I just ask the questions. That's all. That's all I do. I am a generalist. Okay. I'm sending you much love. Thank you, girlie. Excuse me, Dr. Deb.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Love you. Thank you. Chip Gibbons, how are you?
I'm well. How about you?
Doing great. We've just been talking about the Haitian crisis. I'm trying to keep that front of mind for the audience. I don't know if you've seen the pictures. Have you seen them?
I saw them. They were just unbelievable. It's one of those things you see circulating online, and you look at it, and you're like,
I tell you what.
Even as all.
We have a minute 10 left.
And ice and all those. You don't expect people to be riding around on horseback with whips in 2021.
Oh, it took me back to I thought about my ancestors in slavery. That's what it evokes for us. That's what it evokes. You go, wait a minute. You just did what?
That is exactly what it looks like. It is just.
And that's what it is.
Horrifying.
Well, Attorney Sanat, who's the incoming president of the Haitian American Lawyers Association, said the whips are supposed to be for the horses, but of course they're using them for the people. So back in just a minute. Seconds.
Yeah,
it's horrific.
22 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know how you treat human beings like that and live with yourself. I just don't.
10 seconds.
How you do it?
They do it every day, sadly. Okay, we're coming up.
5 seconds.
Okay, here we are.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Tuesday, September 21st, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you today, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars over here on the Santita Jackson and Friends page and on Twitter at SantitaJ and WCPT. We're streaming there as well. And the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe, everybody. We've been talking about the Haitian deportation crisis. We got some good news from Reverend Dr. Marshall Hatch. If you want to hear the podcast of this show, please go to WCPT820.com/Santita. 773-763-9278 is my number, and I want to hear from you. And you can also text me at that number, thanks to GWC Injury Lawyers, 773-763-9278. We're going to be talking with Chip Gibbons, the policy director for Defending Rights and Dissent, about the rights and the right to dissent that we have lost since 2001. Remember when we were supposed to lose these? We were going to peel back our civil liberties just so we can make sure we were safe from the terrorists. Well, didn't quite happen that way, folks. So let me get to a few headlines, and let's bring on Chip Gibbons, everybody. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 68 degrees and showers. I think the fall is here, everybody. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 67 degrees and sunny. The Dow closed down 614 points, losing more than 1% of value yesterday. The NASDAQ closed down 330 points. The S&P 500 closed down 75 points. Well, don't be fearful, everybody. But this is traditionally the worst month for the stock market. But it does bear watching as we're trying to figure out if we are going to lift our debt ceiling. If we don't do it, it will be the first time in our history that America defaults, and we certainly don't want that to happen. The Twins will be playing the Cubs today, and yesterday, well, the White Sox fell to the Tigers. Tigers 4, White Sox 3. And then there was a football game last night. The Packers were triumphant over the Lions. 35 Packers, 17 Lions, everybody. The White House says it's seeking more information about a video that appears to show mounted U.S. Border Patrol agents aggressively confronting Haitian migrants at the southern U.S. border with whips. They're on horseback, everybody. With whips, they're on horseback, evoking images of African Americans in slavery. About 10,000 people, many of them Haitian refugees, are still crowded near the Del Rio, Texas International Bridge after the Department of Homeland Security moved some 3,000 people to other processing facilities yesterday. Many of them have been flown to Port-au-Prince, and they haven't seen it in 10 years. Many, after the earthquake, went to Brazil and Chile and throughout South and Central America, and they said, I think I'm going to have a better opportunity in America. And boy, have they been in for the surprise of their lives. They've been sent back. They've been sent back to Haiti. As the U.S. State Department announced Monday that it would seek to double the number of refugees resettled in the United States over the next year, migrant rights advocates implored the Biden administration to allow many more people into the country. What do you think is going to happen, everybody? Will we get more people or fewer? Pfizer and BioNTech announced that their lower dose COVID-19 vaccine was found to be safe and generated a, quote, robust, close quote, antibody response in children ages 5 to 11. But before those children can become eligible for the vaccine, 4 things must happen. First, Pfizer needs to request FDA authorization for this new age group. Then, the FDA would need to amend the vaccine's emergency use authorization to include younger people. After that, the CDC would have to weigh in. Finally, rollout logistics would need to be addressed, including how to tackle vaccine hesitancy amongst parents. I wonder how that's going to work, because in Washington, D.C., 12 and older, you don't need your parents' permission to get the vaccine. In the meantime, we're seeing 100 million COVID vaccines rot. Yes, a new analysis projecting that 100 million COVID-19 vaccines stockpiled by rich countries and set to expire by the end of the year could be left to waste, is prompting an outcry from social justice campaigners who warn of a potential atrocity as poor nations are refused access to doses. The estimate released on Sunday by science analytics company Airfinity came as tracking by Our World in data showed that just 1.9% of people in low-income countries have received at least one dose. By contrast, 63% of the people in the United States have received it, and 71% of those in the UK have received at least one jab. More than 80% have received it in Israel. So what are we going to do, everybody? What are we going to do? The U.S. is easing travel restrictions for foreign visitors who are vaccinated against COVID-19, but they must also show proof of being COVID negative, everybody. Let's talk about our rights, everybody. Let's talk about our rights. Since 2001, a lot has changed in the United States of America. We don't have the free and open society that we used to have. When I was in college in Washington, D.C. decades ago, you used to be able to, and even before then, in the 80s and the 90s, you used to be able to literally drive in front of the White House and walk in front of the White House, walk up to the gate. No, now the road, literally the street that abuts the White House, all that's blocked off. And now you can't meet people at the gate in the airport. No, you have to wait outside, and you're being pushed out farther and farther away from the airport in the name of security. More and more people are not able to speak out and speak up and speak freely. More and more. What did we trade in, everybody? What did we trade in when we had September 11th in the name of security? What happened, everybody? I want to hear from you at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Want to hear your voices. George W. Bush signed into law the authorization for use of military force 20 years ago. and he was authorizing the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan. But so much has happened before then. What really happened? What have we lost? Where do we go from here? Chip Gibbons, you've got to help me out with this one. Of course, you are the policy director for Defending Rights and Dissent, and you have a letter signed by a lot of people who are saying that, you know what, we need to have a think. It's time for us to revisit where we were, what we've done, and how we can get our rights back. Chip Gibbons, welcome back to the show. What's going on?
Well, thank you for having me back. You know, we're on the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which were a really horrendous tragedy in which, you know, nearly 3,000 people were killed in terrorist attacks. Unfortunately, the Bush administration responded by harnessing our grief and our sorrow at those attacks by launching what they called the global war on terror. We've been thinking a lot about the global war on terror recently with Joseph Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was one part of it, and probably the part most people associate with it has been the overseas wars, which have not been limited just to Afghanistan. Congress passed the AUMF on September the 14th, the authorization for use of military force, on September the 14th, just days after 9/11. On September the 18th, the last Saturday was the 20th anniversary, George Bush signed that into law. Since then, you know, people thought they were voting on the war in Afghanistan. But, you know, the AUMF never mentions Afghanistan once. It's this vague reference to terrorists, people who harbor them, people who are responsible for 9/11. And since then, it's been used to justify by multiple presidential administrations military actions in 19 different countries, including military actions by groups like ISIS, who, as loathsome as they may be, you know, have no nexus or connection to the September 11th terror attacks. So 4 presidents of 2 parties now have used that AUMF, which people understood as voting to invade Afghanistan, which was, you know, not the correct decision, to wage war all over the world. And part of what George W. Bush claimed he was doing was that he was fighting this war on terror that had no borders, no boundaries. It was everywhere. Everywhere included the United States, right? Everywhere was not just overseas. George W. Bush was very clear he was a war president, and the United States was part of this sort of global battlefield. So using the text of this bill, they used that as the legal justification to open the horrendous prison camp at Guantanamo Bay just weeks after it's passed, before they even passed the U.S. Patriot Act. They're using the AUMF to justify domestic surveillance, a secret presidential surveillance program housed in the NSA that is exposed and is completely illegal, and Congress turns around and legalizes it. It was used at times to make these broad claims to detain U.S. citizens in the United States and claim that the courts couldn't overrule them. They didn't have any right to due process. Of course, the courts correctly struck down those moves, but it's really important to remember how expansive George W. Bush claimed his war powers were here in the United States. Of course, beyond just the AUMF, they passed other surveillance legislation. They passed the Patriot Act in late October of 2001. Most members of Congress had no time to read it. Like so much else the Bush administration did, it was from this wish list of this sort of far-right reactionary core who were very, very upset at the limits that were placed on intelligence and law enforcement in the late 70s and wanted to sort of dramatically expand them, and could not get that through because people remembered the abuses of the past, the abuses against people like Martin Luther King and Fred Hampton, and just weren't willing to do this. But then they had this horrible tragedy, and they were able to finally ram this through. You know, you saw expansion of the powers of the FBI. You saw you know, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the creation of ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, as a component of DHS. We were just talking about you were just talking about those horrible images of men on horseback with whips assaulting Haitian refugees. And, ICE and DHS are both relatively recent agencies. They're less than 20 years old. So you saw all of these expansions of the security state. And unfortunately, it didn't end with, the Bush administration. These laws are still in the books. Congress has passed them or passed new ones. We saw both Trump and Obama ratify and expand these policies. Obama very much expanded the drone strikes, the sort of targeted killings by robots, including of a U.S. citizen. He ratified the bulk surveillance programs of the NSA that the Bush administration had created in sort of the dark. When light was shined on them by Edward Snowden, their response was to legitimize them and charge Edward Snowden under the Espionage Act. And of course, Trump came into office and he claimed he had the power to do all kinds of things. He wanted to expand the Guantanamo Bay prison, even though there was no legal authorization for him to do so, and he was failed in doing that. But, if he had gotten a second term, who knows what he might have done. He, indicted for the first time a journalist, Julian Assange, under the Espionage Act for exposing U.S. war crimes in Afghanistan and Iraq. He detained a U.S. citizen who was captured in Syria militarily and made these expensive claims in courts of law about his military detention powers. He campaigned calling for the surveillance of mosques and enacting a Muslim ban. And, that was a really horrible and virulent form of Islamophobia. But it's important to remember that's the end point of the last 20 years of the war on terror, is having someone campaigning for these things. I mean, the FBI is already engaged in surveillance of mosques. All across the country, there's been these incidents where the FBI sends agent provocateurs, sort of paid informants, into mosques where no one is suspected of any wrongdoing. The only thing they're suspected of is being Muslim, and they go into these mosques to gather personal information about law-abiding Muslim Americans, and in some cases, they'll go up to people and ask them to, participate in these terror plots that the FBI has concocted, and they'll prey on extremely vulnerable people and get them to agree, and then the FBI will come and arrest them and say, look at us, we foiled this big terror plot. So it is a really disturbing situation. I think a lot of people are heartened that after 20 years, the ground war in Afghanistan is ending. Unfortunately, I don't know if the air war and the drone strikes will end. We saw the Biden administration carry out that drone strike that was supposedly in response to an ISIS-K attack, but in fact killed only civilians, which is not that uncommon. My entire life we've had smart bombs and targeted bombings and precision bombings and surgical strikes. Those are all the euphemisms they use. And time after time, who is killed by them? Civilians. Mm-hmm. But, if Biden is talking about ending the forever war, that's the phrase they use, we're not going to have a forever war, he needs to end the components of that at home, right? He should be calling on Congress to repeal the 2001 AUMF. There's no need for that to be on the books. We are leaving Afghanistan. Presidents do not need a blank check for war anymore. They should never have had a blank check for war, but they don't need that. He needs to put the constraints back on the FBI that were taken off by Bush's attorney generals, both Ashcroft and McCasey. And he needs to, work with Congress to repeal some of this legislation that has authorized the NSA to engage in this surveillance of U.S. citizens. One of the worst ones that was exposed by Edward Snowden was the collection of people's phone metadata. That program has been shut down. The legal authority of it under the Patriot Act sunset at the end of the Trump administration, and Congress was not able to repass it. The Biden administration needs to say, no, we're not going to repass this. We're not going to seek to put it back. I don't know if anyone is, and just keep that program shuttered. The big other NSA program that's really disturbing is that they tap into the backbone of the internet, and they supposedly are collecting so-called overseas communications. But when they incidentally collect a communication with an American, sometimes a purely domestic communication, the FBI claims there's a backdoor search exception to the Fourth Amendment where they're able to go through and look at this information that supposedly was not even collected on purpose and search it without a warrant. And I believe somebody before the FISA court described what they're doing. It's basically searching this information like one would do a Google search. So you have this full range of really disturbing policies that were put in place because we were waging a global war on terror. We saw, it was more of a war of terror than a war on terror. Americans are tired of that. Both major parties in 2020, whether or not you think they were sincere or not, is a different question, had people during their conventions call for ending either endless wars or ending the forever war. As someone who remembers the post sort of 9/11 frenzy where politicians in both parties sort of, challenged each other as to who could be the bigger warmonger, that was a real stark change to see. And it really shows that the American people are tired of 20 years of war. And we need to be including in that conversation the domestic attacks on civil liberties. And we need to be ending the wars overseas, but we also need to be ending the wars at home and getting rid of all of this surveillance and these expansive powers for the executive branch.
We're talking with Chip Gibbons, the policy director for Defending Rights and Dissent. There has been a letter signed by Noam Chomsky and Marjorie Cohn and so many other prominent civil libertarians and civil rights activists to end the war on terror at home. Just very quickly, I only have about 3 minutes left. Why dismantle the Department of Homeland Security?
Yeah, the Department of Homeland Security, like I said, is a relatively new agency. It was created after 9/11, and it was not something that, people at the time, like my organization and other organizations who work on civil liberties and civil rights, opposed it. Obviously, there's important components of it with disaster response, with emergency management, but a lot of what they've been doing has just been these very costly intelligence boondoggles, including the creation of fusion centers, which are these intelligence sharing apparatuses. I believe Congress described their intelligence sharing capabilities as basically a cesspool because the intelligence in it is so bad, where they disseminate and gather information on social movements and other people they shouldn't be. There was an incident where it came out through the fusion center. It was ATF was gathering information on Occupy Louisiana, the Occupy Wall Street group there. So the DHS was an unnecessary bureaucracy, and it has only added bad things to our society.
I've got about a minute left. What's our takeaway?
Yeah, I think our takeaway is that people can visit us at rightsanddissent.org. They can sign the letter themselves. They can join Noam Chomsky, Abdin Jabbar, Marianne Williamson, Lawrence Wilkerson, who was Colin Powell's chief of staff during the run-up to the Iraq War, in signing this letter and sharing it with their member of Congress. And if you come to rightsanddissent.org, you'll also see we're going to have an online panel today at 3 o'clock Eastern, which I believe is 2 o'clock Central Time?
That's right.
Not good at my time
12 o'clock on the left coast.
That's very bad at my time zones. And it's going to have some of the panelists, including Marjorie Cohen, Kevin Gostala, Ashik Sadiq, as well as Sammy El-Arian, who was prosecuted under the Patriot Act by the Bush administration. And a jury acquitted on some of the charges and deadlocked on other ones, 10-2 in favor of acquittal. And he eventually took a plea deal that resulted in him losing his citizenship and being deported to Turkey. And he is going to be joining us as our surprise guest, although it's not going to be a surprise to your listeners, and sharing his perspective.
Losing
his
really
citizenship. Distinguished panel.
It's very distinguished. Yeah. People lost their citizenship over this, everybody. Think about that. And as citizens, we are less citizens, more subjects because of the rights that we've been losing. So please, 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 please sign on to this petition. Go to rightsanddissent.org, rightsanddissent.org. I put it on my Facebook page. You got to get involved, everybody, because we need our rights back. How about that, Chip Gibbons? Can't wait to have you back on the show.
I'd love to come back.
Absolutely, Chip, because they're not going to give them back.
No, but we're gonna fight for them back.
That's right. We have to take them
We're
back,
not
everybody.
going anywhere.
Right. Blessings to you, Chip Gibbons. Sending you much love,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
And I'm signing the petition myself. How about that? So everybody, rightsanddissent.org. John Nichols coming up on the Santita Jackson Show. Do you want to pay less for your prescription drugs? Well, if Big Pharma has their way, that will not happen. Back in just a minute. Thank you,
Joan
Chip
Esposito,
Gibbons.
live, local, and progressive on WCPT Willow Springs.
Okay, we got John Nichols coming up.
Thank you so much for having me on, Santita.
Oh, look, I'm bugging you all the
really
time.
Appreciate it. No, I know. I'm glad someone is. It's good. It's refreshing.
I bug you all the
and
time.
I'm
Can you
glad
come
I
on? I think great.
I'm glad I could today.
Oh,
Thank
I
you.
am
I really
too.
appreciate that. I really appreciate you giving a platform for a letter. It's an important initiative.
But we'll find another way to.
The sort of thing that with so many things going on, it just falls through the cracks. People say, "Oh, that was 20 years ago." It's like, no, it's still happening. Still happening.
Well, yeah, and that's why I'm saying it's not. I think all we have to do, quite frankly, is do the work, right? And really, and make these issues. I mean, no one's talking about Haiti. Should I say enough people are not talking about Haiti, but we can do that. We're the ones who have to make it happen. I mean, we're the ones who ended slavery. We're the ones who did that. That no one. My father says, slaveholders do not retire. Slave masters don't retire. You have to make them let you go. And rights are won. They're not granted. That's a decree from a king or a queen. Citizens have to fight for it. So thank you so much, Chip.
Excellent advice.
I'm sorry?
All right. That was excellent advice from your father.
Oh,
excellent advice.
It's one of his sayings. He says, slave masters never retire. So, no.
Good one.
So good, yeah.
Anyway.
Blessings to you.
To you as always.
Oh, always.
Good one. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We love Chip Gibbons. Everybody loves Chip Gibbons. We love him. We love him. We love him on the Santita Jackson Show. So everybody, please go to rightsanddissent.org. Sign that petition because we need, so you can hear what's going on outside of my door. How about that on the street? It's nice and loud. John Nichols, are you there?
He didn't pick up the first time I called. I'm calling him back right now.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
High blood pressure, anxiety meds, everyone's on them. If you're a 50-year-old male, maybe a bit porky, and you may even have type 2 diabetes.
John Nichols is on the line.
Okay, John Nichols, how are you?
I am well, my dear. How are you?
Great. You know what? I'm going to do another segment on the Senate parliamentarian tomorrow, so we can go right into these two articles that you sent me, okay?
Okay, that's totally fine.
Okay, what I'd like to start.
Whatever, follow your lead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I want to get right to it because I'd like to start with the centrist Democrats who are blocking our cheaper medications.
Yep.
Okay,
That's a very good story, and it's extended some, so there's even more going on.
45 seconds.
It's terrible.
Cinema from Arizona has stepped in and kind of sided with the House members that voted against it. So the problem is even more severe now than it was before.
Oh, yeah. It's terrible.
30 seconds.
Terrible. It's frustrating. But if you recall your history, it's one of the reasons your dad ran for president.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
To challenge this exact sort of behavior and to try and push Democrats to actually be
15 seconds.
Well, being Democrats and not corporatists.
That's exactly right. To the extent that that's possible.
Well, no, it's possible. That or they're going to lose their party.
Talk,
Stand by.
820, where facts matter.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Right at the bottom of the hour on Tuesday. Every Tuesday, we have John Nichols from The Nation magazine. We're so excited to have him today. There's a lot to talk about today, everybody. I mean, it's like you have whiplash looking at these stories. But we try to bring everything that we can do on the Santita Jackson Show. Please, I'm coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. And, of course, my Facebook family, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars. I want you to meet up with Barbara and Francis and Carol on the left coast, who's happy with the mic today. Sending you much love, my dear sister. Hope you had a wonderful holiday last week. Dave Dowling and Francis, and let me see who else. Andre was at the top, and so many of you, of course, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, L. Stanley Davis, Mr. Holy Ghost, Linda. Sending you all my love today. I want you to call in today. What do you think about how much are your prescription medicines? You know they could be cheaper. They really, really, really could be. They could be cheaper. But some Democrats are actually standing in the way of making that happen. So we got to talk about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. And what happened in Canada, and why should it matter to us? Why should it matter to us? Because it does matter. It really does. Of course, we have got my dear friend, brother beloved, John Nichols from The Nation magazine. Let's start with drug price reform. And maybe I'm just a little sensitive to it because I'm not on Medicare, but certainly, I have to buy medicines, and they've been getting more and more expensive. And then when you think of people who really need life-saving or life-extending, life-preserving medicines, they can run into thousands of dollars. And even when you have good insurance, it's unaffordable. And there have been attempts to change all of that, to have drug price reform. What is drug price reform? Who's been trying to make the change, and who is standing in the way? John Nichols.
Well, thanks for having me on, Santita, and hi to all the morning stars. Look, this drug price reform is one of the oldest issues that Democrats have run and won on. Something going back for a very, very long time, because the pharmaceutical companies make massive profits by charging whatever they can for drugs. And you understand how it happens, right? If you go to the doctor and you're in horrible shape, and the doctor says, well, there's this drug that can make you better. In fact, that can maybe save your life. You don't argue about the price, right? You're sort of like, oh, well, I guess I have to have that because I want to live. And so as a result, pharmaceutical companies charge exorbitant prices, which are far higher than what they charge in other countries. They charge way less in Europe. They charge way less in Mexico. They charge way less in Canada. And that's because in those other countries, usually their government negotiates with the pharmaceutical companies on behalf of a national health care program, and they set a much lower price. We don't do that in the U.S. So the argument for drug price reform is a simple one. It is that we have a very powerful bargaining entity, Medicare, as well as Medicaid, and also, frankly, the VA programs and all sorts of others. We've got a lot of platforms from which to bargain with the pharmaceutical companies. So why don't we do it? Why don't we just say, if you want to get Medicare reimbursement, Mr. Pharmaceutical CEO, you're going to have to lower the price of these drugs, which are very, very popular, especially with a lot of Medicare recipients. It's doable. And who campaigned on it? Who argued for it? Well, Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. All the top Democrats have said they're for this. And we've got legislation now that will do it. It's a very easy thing to do. And one final thing on why it's such an important thing is because if we negotiate on drug prices, we will, as a country, save, and this is as a country because our Medicare, Medicaid, other programs pay out on this in a lot of cases, we will save in the range of $500 billion, perhaps $700 billion. It's a huge amount of money that can be put to pay for other programs, other needs.
Hold on one second. How does that work?
Yeah.
How does that work? If we pay less for our meds, how is money saved?
Sure. Let's say that you are paying for a drug, right? And you're not on Medicare. So you're paying probably via an insurance, but you're probably doing a copay, something like that. But whatever it is, you're paying for it. Well, at this point, you don't have a lot of bargaining power. You need that drug, and probably going to end up you or your insurance paying what you got to pay. In the case of with Medicare, because Medicare is in a situation where it reimburses for drugs, it has the power to negotiate that price down. Once the price is negotiated down, then everybody pays less, right? And so we're using the power of government to lower the prices for everyone. And the end result is that when the government negotiates down that price, as happens in Canada, European countries, everywhere else, when you negotiate that price down, our government is going to save a ton of money. Again, something in the range of $500 billion, maybe up as high as $700 billion over coming years. So this is a really good idea. Everybody knows it's a good idea. The only people that don't like it are the pharmaceutical companies. We're now on the verge of doing it. We're very, very close to moving this legislation as part of the reconciliation plan through Congress. And yet, last week on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, a key committee, the committee tied on the issue. It didn't vote in favor of going forward with it. And you're saying, well, how can that happen? That's a Democratic-controlled committee. It's because 3 members of the committee who receive a ton of money from the pharmaceutical companies voted against it. And it was Democrats, not the Republicans. Republicans are bad on this issue. They're not going to do the right thing anyway. But it was the Democrats that prevented that committee from voting in favor of it. Now, there's other routes through, but now in the Senate, we hear that Kirsten Sinema is saying that she is unsympathetic to it as well. And in the Senate, that's a huge deal because of that need for all 50 senators to vote together on the issue. So we've got Democrats getting in the way of doing something that polling says is through the roof. Everybody supports this. You're looking at like 80, 90% of people want this, and yet not the Republicans. The Republicans are bad on it, to make that clear. But it is Democrats that might end up standing in the way of having it happen.
Well, then these Democrats are bad on it too. There's no difference.
They're terrible on it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and you said it's 3 centrists in particular. The corporate, these true corporatized Democrats.
Yeah, I think you're right. You've often said this to me, and I think it's absolutely true. We should be careful not to use the pundit or public relations language to describe these people when we say they are centrists. It sort of lets them off the hook. Mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is they are corporatists. They are Democrats who do the bidding of multinational corporations that give them lots of money rather than doing the bidding of the great mass of people who maybe don't have as much campaign money to give, but whose votes are the votes that elect the Democrats. And here's the really frustrating thing, Santita. On the House Energy and Commerce Committee, when the bill came early this year, start of 2021, when Democrats were going to clearly be in control of Congress, but not by a wide margin, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez from New York, a member of the squad, stepped up and said she would like to be on the Energy and Commerce Committee. There was an open seat. She got endorsements from fellow members of her New York delegation. It was a traditionally New York seat. She had backing from a lot of other key people. A lot of people said, yeah, we really want her on this committee, partially because it deals, Energy and Commerce deals with climate justice as well, but because she's very good on this pharmaceutical drug price reform issue. She was blocked by senior Democrats from getting onto the committee, and instead they put Kathleen Rice, a much more conservative Democratic member from New York, on the committee. And last week, Kathleen Rice was one of the three that voted to block drug price reform.
Who blocked
her? If they had simply put AOC on the committee,
of course.
If they had simply put AOC on the committee, they would have had enough votes to pass it.
Who blocked her?
What's that?
Who blocked her?
Who blocked her? Yeah,
it seems to me.
Good question.
Well, to me, no, it's not a trick question. It's more about process and politics, right? Yeah. I'm looking at these corporate Democrats and these now new blue dog Democrats who now are black. They're doing a lot to thwart our progress, John.
Well, in this case, this was the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. And one key member, Henry Cuellar out of Texas, who's the most conservative, most corporate Democrat in the House. And he almost got beaten his primary in 2020 by a candidate who was backed by AOC. And so Cuellar was furious at AOC, furious at more progressive Democrats. So he led the charge in blocking her on the steering committee. There's no question. That's quite well established. But here's another subtlety of this thing. We have to go up the political hierarchy and recognize that I think if Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and others had really fought to this, we would have gotten a better member on that committee. Okay. And so I think there's a lot of blame to go around. I think Cuellar, there's little doubt that he was in the lead on this thing, but I do think that the Democratic Party has a money problem, a money and politics problem. And even Democrats who are, who say they're on the right side of this issue, and frankly would be when they went and voted, they let the members who are, frankly, in the service of the pharmaceutical companies, people like Cuellar, take the lead on these things and produce results. So I think we have to spread the blame around here. I don't think we can just narrowly assign it.
Well, and I think that we need to look at, the politics, the politics driving the Democratic Party. They want progressives' votes, but they want progressives to shut up. They run on progressive rhetoric. Right. Well, they run on progressive rhetoric, and then they get into Congress, they get into their seats, and then they govern as corporatists. In the meantime, Americans, John, we don't have any money.
Well, and the challenge on this one, this is a really interesting thing. You have Americans who, with a little bit of government intervention, would have enough money to get by, right? It's not as much as we should. There's a lot of things that have to change. But, it's these things. It's these, kind of often uncovered and little noted actions which really put Americans in a tough place. Because if you're a diabetic, if you're, someone who is in need of a special drug that is very, very expensive, if you've got great insurance, right, you're going to be fine. But if you don't have great insurance, if you're kind of on the margins, and we find this especially with younger people, like young folks who are diabetics, where they're in a situation where they ration their insulin because they just can't afford it. Mm-hmm. And Bernie Sanders tells a story of a mother of a child who I hope I'm telling the story correctly, in the Detroit area, who passed away because the young man was rationing his insulin. And the mother then had become an activist on behalf of drug price reform. And Sanders and others took her over just across the river from Detroit to Windsor, Ontario, literally a 5-minute ride. And the prices of insulin were so dramatically lower that there was no question her son could have afforded it. And the mother just broke out in tears.
But John,
to realize that literally crossing a river is all that mattered there.
John, seniors for years have been taking bus rides up the East Coast just to cross the border into Canada to pay much, much, much less. Not to mention the fact that now not only are Americans rationing their insulin because they cannot afford it, they're now going to animal insulin. They're going to dog insulin because they cannot afford human grade insulin. Now, mind you, before, a few years ago, you did use animal grade insulin, but no more. And so this is, I don't know, how can we make this an issue? I'm not going to despair about this. I know that we have the power to change a lot.
Well, look, there's a way to make this an issue. It's happening right now. I believe today, Bernie Sanders, who's taken the lead on this issue for many, many years, other members of Congress and a lot of activist groups are actually going to be speaking together in Washington about this issue, making it, trying to raise it up and get more attention to it. And look, there's a lot of urging coming from public citizen and other groups for people across this country to go to the offices of these corporate Democrats and say, no more. We won't accept this. To actually call them out and to protest, to put pressure on them. Now, we understand the power of the pharmaceutical companies. They and their CEOs, other folks, they give a tremendous amount of money. So, there'll be some Democrats who won't change, who are more interested in serving the pharmaceutical companies than they are in serving their constituents. And frankly, Santita, this is why primary challenges were invented.
Absolutely.
If you've got a Democrat who won't do the job,
you got to get them out.
It is an appropriate point to,
You got to get them out. Let me bring up a couple of phone callers before we go. Robert from Wisconsin. Robert, what's on your mind? It's always a joy to hear your voice.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on this. One, I'm just amazed that the Democrats that did this actually are supposed to exist. I believe one of the is Oregon, the other one's California. So it was a little surprising to me. The 2020 race, if you remember, just because the Narrows took on Henry Cuellar down in Texas, the 28th district. If you remember, Nancy Pelosi went down there and stumped for him. She gave lots of money, and she went down there and stumped for him. So, I mean, the problem is also with the leadership. We talked about these moderates, and in reality, these people are corrupt. There's 2 or 3 drug lobbyists for every one of them in Congress. So she went down there to make sure that Henry Cuellar kept his seat when Jessica Cisneros was giving him a strong run. So did the Chamber of Commerce. So, I mean, we really need to look at these people with a very concerning eye in terms of when they talk about moderates. If we're watching MSNBC or CNN, Joe Gates is not a moderate, corrupt. And we need to start calling these people out that way and actually hold them accountable. When I think about the money that is spent, the government not negotiating drug prices put in place during the Bush administration. Think of all the billions of dollars that could be used for other priorities. So I just hope everyone gets out and really starts backing some of these people that are going to primary candidates. And then the other thing is just Democrats have not helped themselves and then put into power people work really hard to get to Congress. And their answer to a lot of this stuff is a strongly written letter, a tweet, a post. AOC going to a $30,000 plate dinner wearing a dress packed to the rich just seems kind of tone deaf to me. So,
well, you know what?
Actually use their leverage.
But to be fair, the Met Gala is a big, big, big event, and it was an opportunity to publicize that issue. It was I don't have a problem with that. I think I respect the fact that you did. I understand tone deaf. I understand that. But what she did was she seized an opportunity to have that discussion. Now we're still talking about that dress and the issue days later. Yeah. And so when you have that opportunity and when you're as pretty as she is and she works and you use whatever God gives you to make it work and to move this thing along, right?
Yeah, the discussion is great, but they need to follow on using their leverage, either voting or not voting against these. So that's when they'll get fired up to support them.
Yeah, you're right. And we have to make them do it. Stay right there, Robert. We can talk a little bit right after we get off there, but I want to bring on Renee. Renee, very quickly, because we're
Renee
going to.
dropped.
Oh, Renee dropped, but okay, but stay right there. John, why don't you respond to Robert? Because AOC did get some blowback for going to the Met Gala, but I said, hey, I think that's a good thing. But I think, well, but but I understand it.
Silly.
Well, but no, but I understand it in this time of want. But what do we do now? Because he makes the point, which is a point that you just made, about putting a fine point on who these elected officials are. It's not as simple as you being a Republican or a Democrat. I'm from Illinois. I lived under tyrannical Democratic regimes. You could reason with Republicans. You might disagree with a lot of their, with some of their policies, but they were reasonable. It was the Democrats when I was growing up, and even now, that you get a lot of pushback from. And now, even more to the point, you have corporatists in both parties. You have populists in both parties. And I think we need to make that point because we can't pay all this money. People are being asked to pay thousands of dollars for life-saving, life-extending medications. They can't do that. They can't.
So let's have a hierarchy on this. First and foremost, on the key committee that voted last week, Energy and Commerce in the House, every Republican voted the wrong way. So let's not fool ourselves. The Republicans that you could talk to in the past don't exist anymore.
Oh, no, I got that. But I'm saying to sit up here and act as if the Democrats have not been overrun with corporatists. When Nancy Pelosi is helping Henry Cuellar. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Get out of my way when I'm primarying him. That's what you need to do. That's what we asked Ted Kennedy and Walter Mondale to do when we were trying to elect Harold Washington in Chicago. They wouldn't get out of our way. And you know what? We got them out of the way. That's what I'm saying.
Right. So let's go down this hierarchy. First off, every Republican is on the wrong side of this issue.
Okay.
At least on that key committee. That's important to understand because not that long ago you had moderate Republicans you could work with, and so you could toss aside some of your more conservative Democrats, more in those days segregationist Democrats.
But I was saying that historically. I'm saying, but right now I've got centrist Democrats who are in my way.
Well, that's right. So let me finish this thought.
Okay, sorry about that.
Off, that's okay. It's just fine, but first, it's important to understand it's just not that breathing room that you had in the past. There was a space where you could build a coalition, which had, progressive Democrats, even moderate Democrats, and some moderate Republicans. That doesn't exist anymore. And so now you have to focus your attention on the Democratic Party. And so in a way, Washington has become a lot like Chicago was in the 1970s and 1980s.
And 50s and 60s.
The Republican Party wasn't. The Republican Party wasn't going to win. The Democratic Party was going to win. So the question is, what kind of Democrat is going to win? That's where this hierarchy becomes important. And as we say to we can't rely on the Republicans. In this case, you're going to have to rely on the Democrats. Unfortunately, because it's a very divided country, there aren't that many Democrats. There's not some huge majority. It's not like Lyndon Johnson in 1964 or Franklin Roosevelt in 1936. And so as a result, you've got to focus in on the Democratic Party and recognize that in this case, if you've got a handful of Democrats who do the bidding of the pharmaceutical companies, even if it's 5 or 6, that might be enough to trip up the entire effort to literally save the lives of millions of Americans, to lower the drug costs for tens of millions, hundreds of millions of Americans. So that's what's at stake. And the next time that you've got some Democrat, prominent Democrat, maybe even a pretty moderate to liberal Democrat say to you, oh, yeah, well, you have to have party unity. You can't have primaries. Primaries, divide us and stuff like that. The answer to them is this, to say, no, when you allow Democrats like Henry Cuellar to come in and stop the right people from getting on committees and put the wrong people on committees, that is fully serving the pharmaceutical companies. That is not serving the people. And a final component I'll put on this, which I think is really important, in this situation, if Democrats don't pass prescription drug reform. And if they don't pass other very popular elements of the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, such as family and medical leave, such as dental, hearing, and vision care provided under Medicare, such as free community college, all sorts of things in the reconciliation that are extremely popular. If they don't do that, it's going to be much harder for Democrats to rally the base in November of 2022. And so from a practical standpoint, I would argue these corporate Democrats are not really harming the great mass of American people. They are harming the Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
If that's the case, then that makes an argument for primaries.
Absolutely. Look, I was born out of that tradition. So get them out.
That's right.
Because you are not doing what I need you to do. That's what primaries are for. That's what elections are for. I'm supposed to let you know that I like what you're doing on your job. And then I let you know that I don't like what you're doing on your job. There's nothing wrong with that. Let them go. Because we need some relief.
It is a necessary part. It's a necessary part of politics.
We need. Hold on. We're going to get back on the other side. I love you, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson. So stay right here on Santita Jackson and Friends.
Now that commission-free trading is the norm,
you can bring
it's
that
time
down.
to rethink how we define.
Okay, thank you so much. But I got about 5 minutes. But you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go run and switch.
Okay. But I was saying that to John too. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm just going to remind folks, and this is a really important thing. Shirley Chisholm, Ron Dellum, Bella Abzug, Elizabeth Holtzman. If we look back at Democrats who were critical leaders in the early 1970s, and again, especially Dellums, Abzug, Holtzman, key progressive leaders, every one of them won their seats in a primary beating a Democratic incumbent. Right? We forget that some of the iconic figures in progressive politics and in Democratic politics are folks who beat Democratic incumbents. Even in 1932, when Franklin Roosevelt was running for president, he won that 1932 Democratic nomination by pushing aside Al Smith, who had been not the incumbent president, but the Democratic nominee in the previous election. And so it's really vital to understand that this fight within the Democratic Party at times doesn't harm the Democratic Party. It often strengthens it, and it gives us some of our most iconic and important leaders.
Well, I just know the Democratic Party didn't make Reverend Jackson. Reverend Jackson made the Democratic Party.
Oh, no.
We had to run against Mayor Daley to get seated along with Bill Singer in 1972. There's nothing wrong with that. When things are not right, you have the obligation to change them and make them right. And so that's why I have held to the point. You need to make a distinction between Democrats, just mainstream Democrats and progressive Democrats, and put a fine point on it and call them out for being corporatist Democrats. I don't have a problem with you being a corporatist. I'm just not going to elect you. Or at least I know if you are driven by the corporations, then I know how to fight you. Because these corporatists need to be dealt with because people out here are suffering. They are rationing their medicines, not just insulin. They're rationing their meds, or they're going past them. They're saying, okay, a meal, my meds, my meal, my meds. Well, okay, my rent. Come on. What is that?
And that also it's important to understand that in some cases, it's not even a case of rationing. In some cases, prescription drugs are so expensive, especially in some of the cancer drugs and others, that people simply cannot afford them. And so as a result, it's not a matter of rationing. It's a matter of people not being able to afford drugs that will save their lives.
It's survival.
And in this case, it's life and death. Yeah.
It's survival.
Life and death.
My parents have great insurance,
and we have
John.
the ability to address it.
John, my parents have great insurance. Great insurance. But they're elderly now. Not elderly, but they are elders. And when I see what some of their medicines cost, I'm like, good grief. Huh. You know, I mean, just to get over the hump on COVID, or just you need this, you need. Oh my gosh, with blue chip insurance and Medicare.
Yeah.
I mean, wait a minute,
Well,
that is
and
ridiculous.
What's wrong with our country? But what's wrong with our country in general, in a much broader sense? Why should you need additional insurance when you're on Medicare?
That's crazy.
Right? Because not everybody can get additional insurance when they're on Medicare. Some people just simply can't afford it. They worked all their lives. They couldn't save a lot of money. They had kids. They had school. They had everything to pay for. So they get there, and what they've got is Social Security and Medicare. And in that case, those people are living in poverty. Not always, but often. And when they've got a need, they can't afford it. And that's absurd. We should not have to have a dual system where you get Medicare and then you got to get another insurance policy to cover what Medicare doesn't. The fact of the matter is we, as a society, ought to be making these programs work. But the reason they don't work is because there are too many people in Congress, Democrats and Republicans, who talk a good game, but when it comes time to actually do the changes that will make those programs work, somebody always, jumps aside and says, "Oh, I can't do that. I can't do this." And the end result is that we have not progressed in the way that we should. Since Lyndon Johnson got us Medicare and Medicaid back in the mid-'60s.
60 years ago, just about.
That it hasn't progressed to the point where it should be.
I mean, that's why I'm saying, wait a minute, corporatists. Because I know when Reverend brought 3.5 million, 2.5 to 3.5 million voters into the Democratic Party in 1983 and 1984, it was the corporatist Democrats who organized the DLC to counter him. What is that? Wait a minute, you mean to tell me I bring you a whole new constituency? No one's ever brought this many new voters into the American voting process in America's history, and you're pushing back at me? I'm the enemy? Oh, no. And they continue to do that. And then the same person who AOC defeated, well, before he left, he decides to go after Barbara Lee using a black member of Congress. That's not kosher. That doesn't work. And you need to call people out on that. It's costing us money and it's costing us our lives, John. It's not right.
Well, and it's a good lesson. You're right. And it's a very good lesson that these committee assignments, something that people don't pay a lot of attention to, right? It's like, that's just who goes into what slot. No. Who makes up these committees often decides everything about how we progress as a country. And so we've got to pay a lot more attention to it. And we've got to pay a lot more attention to the way that the pharmaceutical companies, which have more lobbyists on Capitol Hill than any other industry, literally 1,200 lobbyists. There's 3 pharmaceutical lobbyists for every member of Congress, for every member of the House.
Unbelievable.
And it's this overwhelming influence. And they get what they want. As Bernie Sanders says, there's no industry that gets what it wants so consistently as the pharmaceutical industry. And so we've got to focus on it, and we've got to recognize that this has got to change. There's got to be one party, at least one political party that's willing to stand up to it.
Absolutely. And we're going to have to force the Democrats to do that. And I realize Nancy Pelosi's power. Nancy Pelosi is the most prodigious fundraiser in the party. That's a fact. She raises more money for the Democratic Party than anybody. I like Nancy Pelosi, but this is business. This is my business.
Well, and also, it's one of the ways that Nancy Pelosi is so successful as a leader is to let other people, do their bidding. She gives people a lot of space, right? And that's sometimes people on the left, sometimes people on the right. Now, that can work up to a point because it allows her to pull everybody together for a key vote, right? And for the reason she can deliver both effectively. But in this case, what I would suggest is she's got to come down hard on these folks, the folks especially on energy and commerce and others. They have other routes. They can find a way to save the drug price reform. They can use the Ways and Means Committee. They can use a manager's amendment to get it onto the final plan. In the House, I think Pelosi will be able, despite some failings along the way, may be able to save this thing. But in the Senate, where Kirsten Sinema is now suggesting that she may not, that she's literally signaling she probably won't support this. I mean, that's going to kill it.
Nancy Pelosi has the power to do some things. She can add members to Congress. I mean, look, we can't continue to talk about
members to committees.
Absolutely, but we can add members to Congress. We can add members to committees. We can do a lot of things that we're not pressing Nancy Pelosi and others in leadership to do. And we need, it seems impossible, but no. It's not impossible. What did Muhammad Ali said? You see impossible, I see I'm possible. Hallelujah. You see impossible, I see I'm possible. We are but a thought away, a changed thought away from a new world. But we have to get up and step up to the plate and make it happen. Nancy Pelosi is no more powerful than you. You're the one who lets her stay in her seat. You're the one who lets Steny Hoyer stay in his seat, Jim Clyburn, and on and on and on and on. These people serve at your pleasure, and they should. But now you got to make some things happen, everybody. Now come on, because John, this is not working. I'm watching people who are going into the hospital for COVID. They come out. Oh my gosh, all the money it costs them, not to mention the fact that they're not given therapeutics early enough. They're not even given the option of getting therapeutics. All they want to know is, are you getting the vaccine? Hey, people need medicine. It's very clear when you look at Israel, the second or third most vaccinated place on earth. This is a therapeutic medicine that mitigates the severity of COVID-19. It doesn't stop you from getting it. It does not stop you from spreading it. It does not stop hospitalizations. And in some cases, it does not stop death. You need medicine. And you shouldn't be so sick. You shouldn't be more than mildly symptomatic to get this medicine. We can change things, John. And I mean, I know I'm going off, but this is like ridiculous. I want everybody to get the same kind of health care that my parents have got. And I know my mother's.
And frankly,
quite frankly,
I want your parents to get better care.
Thank you. How about that?
I want everybody to get the same care that Bill Gates gets.
How about
I want everybody to get the same care that Joe Biden gets. I want us
that Donald Trump
to have I want us to have a quality of care that, whether you're working class or well-to-do, whether you're obscure or the most prominent person in the country, that when you get sick, there is an expectation that if it's possible for you to get well, you're going to get well, right? That your medical care will be sufficient to your need, not sufficient to your pocket. And that's the key. It's that when we remove profit from healthcare and we make healthcare a system that is about keeping people healthy, what we're going to find very, very quickly is we can live a lot longer, we can live a lot healthier. And there's a fascinating article in the New Yorker just a week or so ago about Costa Rica, where they spend dramatically less on healthcare, but they put a huge emphasis on treating overall health conditions, on a lot of public health, on getting to people before they get sick. And in Costa Rica, as an example, just to give you a quick example, when they build a new apartment building in Costa Rica, there's a requirement that one of the apartments be set aside for a clinic. And so in every apartment building, even in the poorest neighborhoods, there's a healthcare clinic with doctors and nurses in the building.
They have that in Cuba.
The impact, right. And you know what's happening in Costa Rica? In Costa Rica now, they live longer than we do in the United States.
Absolutely. On Cuba, there is a doctor on every block.
That's right.
See, I want to know.
It's a hugely effective system.
And I want to know what they're doing with vaccines. I mean, all of the politics, take that out of.
They're producing vaccines.
And I want to know what's in their vaccines.
They're trying to.
They have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. I want to talk to them. I want to talk to them. And everyone knows in South and Central America, if you get cancer, you go to Cuba. That's real.
That is true.
That's real.
Even the leaders of other countries.
Look.
And so, The bottom line on this is a very simple one, and that is that we can do so much better. We can do so much better. But for us to do better, right, we have to recognize it's not a budget issue. It is not a science issue. This is not a research issue. This is not a distribution issue. This is not a doctors and nurses issue. This is a political issue. And if we don't get our politics right, we're not going to do better.
Absolutely. And we're the ones who have to make that happen. We're the ones. We're the ones. We are the ones. What did President Obama say? We're the ones we've been waiting for. I mean,
We
look.
are the ones we've been waiting for.
I mean, and, the thing is, you are transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's as old as days. Now, we have to make some decisions about how we're supposed to live. Oh, that'll never happen. No. Then you need to, look, you need to primary some people and primary them out of their offices. And then you know what? You need to stay on top of your representative to make them do what you sent them there to do. Because when you get onto Capitol Hill, you are faced with a whole different set of pressures. And my brother was in Congress, and that was one of the things that just bothered him, John. He got there, and I was like, you mean to tell me you didn't know it was like this? We already knew this, but okay, you're here. But it was devastating to him to see that, the money, the graft. And he said, you can't move. You only have a 2-year term. You come in here trying to raise money. Then you got Rahm Emanuel, who is head of the DCCC, telling you, you owe me $200,000. What? I just got here. Every year. You got to raise $200,000, which compromises your vote. Okay? That's how it works there. And so we need to be clear on that. And if that's just for, are you a representative? What do you think happens on the Senate side? And what do you think happens on the presidential side? Come on. Everybody, no.
It's just
this has to change, John. It's costing people their lives.
It is a critical issue.
When I read your article, I just said, I just I saw red. I was like, are you serious? Look at this. I mean, I said it comes back to these centrists every time. I mean, look, I know at this iteration of the Republicans, I know what I'm getting with them. But what I'm tired of doing is having a fight within my party. I am tired of that. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of you coming into my neighborhood or into my church or into my space and telling me what the Democrats are, Democrats and Republicans. Do not treat me like I'm an idiot. Because you're as Republican you're as right wing as anyone else. I'm not going to even besmirch Lincoln's party that way. You're just a corporatist. That's what you are. You do the bidding of corporations. You do not do the bidding for me. And I'm clear on it, and I'm calling you on it. Don't you dare do that. Lincoln is spinning in his grave. That is not what he stood for. The Democrats were Dixiecrats just a few generations ago. Please, when I met Strom Thurmond, my father had me come up to a Senate hearing that he was testifying at when I was a freshman in college, John. And he wanted me to meet Strom Thurmond. And my father could do the best imitation of Strom Thurmond, who had been his senator all of his life, right? And he said,
was born there.
Baby, I want you to take you over here to meet Strom Thurmond. And I was like, oh my gosh. Because, I just, it was Strom Thurmond and, all these thoughts of Strom Thurmond and his history. And he was very, very nice because my father had known him a long time. I think since college even, maybe high school. Jesse, how are you? He said, Senator, it's good to see you. It's Reverend. He went between Jesse and Reverend. It's good to see you. Now, who's this beautiful young lady? He said, this is my baby. She's a freshman at Howard. He said, oh, great Negro school.
Oh my gosh!
Oh please, I wasn't appalled. I knew who he was. Come on, and I knew
what he would say.
Well, I knew he was 1,000 years old. I knew he was a product of a particular culture. I said, I cannot wait to get back to see the president of my university, Dr. James Cheek, and tell him that this man said Howard was a great Negro school. But it is what it is. I also knew he had a black daughter who was older than my parents. She was my grandmother's contemporary. I knew all of that. I can deal with that. I just want you to do it the right way. That's what I need you to do. I'm not into you giving me love and all. Look, honey, I'm a grown woman. I don't need you to do that for me. This is not a date. I don't need you to tell me what I look like. I don't need all that. What I need you to do is vote so that the government can negotiate with Big Pharma and get this big load off my back called my medical bills. It's not working, John. And the corporatist Democrats and the corporatist Republicans have to be called out. And if the Republicans want to be held captive to whatever they're held captive to, fine. But I don't think as a Democrat I should be held captive to the corporations and corporate Democrats either. In the name of being a Democrat. I'm not afraid of Republicans. And I'm not afraid of them either. And if they're not going to act like they need to get out of that seat because I own how about that?
I think that's the message that we're talking about today. And I fear I have to head on.
Okay,
I bet you do
my
as
sweet. And I went off today. Thank you very much.
It's good. Well, I'm glad we gave you some stuff to go off on.
Oh, you did? Look, I'm telling you, your article made me go, huh?
Yeah. Well, there'll be more of them because I'm afraid this issue isn't going away. And I think that it's vital that we pay a lot of attention to it because this is a real world fight. This is people's lives, and it's not congressional bureaucracy. It's not committees. Ultimately, this is about whether the Congress of the United States this year will take the action that allows our government to dramatically reduce prescription drug prices. And I'll tell you this, if Democrats dramatically reduce prescription drug prices, A, it's going to make people's lives better. B, probably going to make Democrats a lot more successful politically. That being on the wrong side of this issue is political malpractice.
Wow. Well, we got to get it right. As you go, let me say hello to Norma Jean. You said your cousin had both vaccines and just passed with COVID. God bless you, Norma Jean. Did they get their therapeutics in time? Let me know. But I tell you what, with COVID, the studies are showing from all over the world that you need to have vitamin D3, and you have to have enough of it every day. That most of the people, the overwhelming majority of people who die from COVID are vitamin D deficient. That's not having. You've got to get your immune system together. That's real too. There's a lot that needs to happen all the way around so that we can not just deal with COVID, but the flu, pneumonia, all of these things that bedevil us, throughout our lives. We need to do that, everybody. We need to do that. Norma Jean, I'm sending you my love. And please check and let me know. Let me know tomorrow because I think it's important for us to know what happened because I think that while we need equity, we need equal access to vaccines, we need equal access to the therapeutics. I want you to be able to get what Governor Abbott of Texas got. He was fully vaccinated once he was diagnosed, and he was mildly symptomatic. He didn't think he had COVID. They gave him Regeneron, monoclonal antibodies. They gave it to him immediately, so they could mitigate the virus becoming severe. I think that should happen for everybody. You shouldn't say, okay, well, you've got COVID, but you're mildly symptomatic. You've been vaccinated. Just go home. No. By the time you present again, you might be very sick. You don't know. That's the way COVID acts. We don't know. So, no, we need equal access to medicine as well. And give it to me as early as you can so you can knock this thing out for me. I don't need to have to get on a ventilator. Trust me, I know this. I love you, everybody. I love you, John. Enough of this for the day. Woo.
Have a great day. Have a great day.
Oh, you too. And thank you for letting me go off today, John.
I love it when you do.
Oh, no, it's
strong.
just too much.
Give your parents my love. Give your parents my love.
Oh, bless your heart. Call Daddy.
Talk to you. I will.
Call Daddy. Because he is trying to take
shortly.
every phone call he can. Now you shouldn't, buddy. That's what he's doing.
I know he does. He's always good.
Bless his heart.
All right.
Love
Take
you.
care, my love.
Thank
Be
you.
strong. Do great.
God bless you. Love you, everybody. Norma Jean, get that information to me tomorrow, okay? And let's try and get it on early so I can pass it on to Dr. Deb and Dr. Shanina Knighton. because I think that's important. Vitamin D3 is rarely mentioned. You're right, D-Ray, but it needs to be mentioned because, in fact, there was a white conservative member of parliament in the UK who was trying to get their healthcare system to send vitamin D3 to everybody in England because the data has shown in country after country that people who die of COVID are vitamin D3 deficient. And we need to examine it all. You need to look at what's happening in Israel, even though, interestingly enough, in Israel, they only use the Pfizer vaccine. So that's interesting. You know, that's their vaccine of choice. That's important. So when you're looking at Israel, you're not looking at Moderna and BioNTech and Pfizer BioNTech. You're just looking at one vaccine. So we need to look at other countries and see and look here and find out how's Moderna, how's the J&J vaccine? I mean, it's all of that because the J&J vaccine does not use mRNA technology. That's interesting. All of these questions we need to be able to ask. We need to be able to ask, not just tell me, oh, go get the jab. No, it's not that simple. So let's start asking some real questions because our lives depend upon the questions that we ask. And we need to press people to give us the right information. Andre, thank you, D-Ray, thank you, Norma Jean. I'm praying for you and your family. We just had COVID, and boy, oh boy, I'm just thanking God that my parents have pulled on through. It's nothing but God, really. God is a miracle worker, and this is God. I'm very clear, very, very, very clear that God delivered my mother and father, and I thank God for that. Thank God for that. God's a miracle worker, and it is no secret what God can do. What He's done for others, He'll do for you. Keep praying, everybody. I love you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Okay, somebody asked me about my bracelet. Yeah. I gotta have some crazy jewelry. I love you, everybody. Have a good one.